In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful, in honor of the original, unconditional being of this world room, in which all simulated moments have arisen from, in the presence of a world that doesn't fully comprehend itself. And as a simulated being, I'd like to give a lecture today. In honor of the highest forces and the lowest forms, in honor of all that is participating in this world event, conscious world. Hidden beings hiding behind their personalities and the secret presence of life. The subtitle is a bold statement, but I feel that I can share and I can contribute to that vision. Dear viewers, there are many ways to look at the world. The way you're looking at the world is one mode, one path. There are many paths up the same mountain. The task of the human species is to comprehend its true nature and remember its original command. All human souls in this sector, you have all been commanded into position. Once you remember your original command, your true self will activate. It is now time to speak about the macro situations of humanity. I have lived many days as an individual, and that's what happens. You end wondering about the collective. 2026, still a time in history where the ideas that people have own their moment. The idea of the person, ideas own the whole moment rather than ideas being acknowledged as part of the moment. And what is meant that beings are hiding behind their personalities. We're living in a world where the personality is taken for the person. Your expression is identified to you. We're living in a very profound subjective context where bodies are responsible for the ideas, for their communication. So, in some sense, you have this space, then you have a ground, then you have creatures that are moving on the surface. Okay? And then these creatures and influence, and we tie down their expression and influence to themselves. But when you look at the individual is not an individual. It is influenced by everything it has experienced so far. In the same way that you don't know, in the background, in how many tourists' background photos you are in. For me, it is very fascinating that is a civilizational intelligence. To me, it's all about systems. Um, I know that there's different types of human beings, therefore having different. We treat each other, treat humans as different, like telescopes. Every human can see a different range. To me, it's very obvious. The puzzle piece is there. The puzzle are the puzzle pieces. Now these pieces have to, in some sense, unify to present a greater picture, a greater context. That means the purpose of everybody alive is to, in some sense, like puzzle pieces, unite and create greater pictures in which the future generations will enter reality through. If you treat Earth If you think about Earth from a human perspective, you get a limited interpretation and limited access of it. Okay, but if you think about Earth as a tool, if you legit feel like a tourist here, you're gonna see that the experience of the tourist in this unknown world, in its youth, it's simpler. This world is designed that when you're younger, you're a simpler being. Reality is the way. When you grow up, you begin to see all your blind spots. You begin to see everything that was there that you had not acknowledged. So, what this really means is that the presence of reality is different than its personality. And so, when a human being wants to speak about the secret presence of life, this human being better have discovered something to say that. You know, I better have seen something to be talking about the secret presence of life than I have. What I have seen is a completely different approach to the human experience. We're all conditioned to treat ourselves as nouns, to treat others as nouns, and we're these nouns that are, interacting with each other through verbs. So we think we're a noun, and we think that the verb is the quality of what this special noun can do. But in reality, it is an unknown verb. We have been identifying with the static rather than the dynamic. And the dynamic life of the human being is not individual. That means, think about it this way: you are as individual as you are different to everyone, right? Like if I see another person outside, right? Like right now, I'm in front of a Tim Hortons coffee shop using the Wi-Fi. I'm in my private studio for temporary private studio in my car. It appears to me that no way in any game, any person who's played any game in your life, the first time you play it, you might get lucky because you don't know what you're doing and you're creating new relationships. But the moment they explain the rules of the game, your talent stops. You know, when I was younger, I thought there was confidence. There was confidence. Well, how wrong was I? There's no such thing as confidence. No such thing as confidence. I don't believe this. It's the biggest illusion. There is no such thing as confidence. There is just the basic scenario that all humans are responding to their uncertainty. If you look at every human being and you don't base them based on their certainty, you just look at that human being and be like, okay, the intelligence of that being is based on what it does with its uncertainty. You know, so every human psyche, the psychology of all humans, is their strategy to the uncertainty, to stabilize the uncertainty in their reality. And moments come and go. Man will live on, and there will be so many different versions of the human. That's what we all are. We each are a unique version, a version of humanity, of the human being that has never existed. You're all members of the human species. You have forgotten. You have forgotten your honor. That means imagine like a parent forgetting their child in a mall. Imagine someone forgetting something that was very important, and you know what the human species has forgotten. It has forgotten what it deserves in the future. Today, enjoy it while it lasts, my whole life until this point, I was under the impression that an individual had to calculate their existence. I was under the impression that we had to connect the dots, and we had to learn what the world was. It did not occur to me that my presence is from the world. And what I am telling you today, the secret presence of life is simply that your life is present in ways that you're not conscious of. That what you actually are is energy at its core. Energy cannot be created and destroyed. And if the secular community and the scientific community understands, you know what, there's a reason they don't let philosophers in the science classroom. Because the philosopher can say one sentence and make the whole universe void. And that sentence is simply this: that if energy is consciousness, then that explains how we are souls that cannot be created or destroyed. You understand? That's what they're refusing. The secular scientific community, they're refusing to see energy as awareness. But that's what it is. Because us identifying with the form of life is the tip of the iceberg. Existence is energy. Energy changes from form to form. However, if this energy is intelligent, this suggests a field's intelligence. So, what does that mean? We think that we are the object, even though we're living as subjects, but we don't realize human life is hilariously can be seen as the marriage between an intelligent divine field. So pretty much force and form had a child that was called being. You know, we are reaching that moment in history where all humans have to make a decision. You will either follow your personality in a looping world, or you will follow your presence in an unknown. The decision for humans has been clear from the beginning. You are a knownist or an unknownist. Your allegiance is to the unknown or the known. And you have to, as a being, be very careful in realizing that attention is the most important value, the most important resource. Kingdoms were not built based on resources and bricks, they were built by the attention of human beings who cared. There is no greater power in this realm than a consciousness that cares for what it sees. It is the power of mankind. We saw greatness and we want towards it. That is the power of humanity. Do you know? It's like this. It's like what really defines humanity is we notice the important and we walk towards it. What does it mean to die if we don't know how we were really alive? And we're living at that point where human beings have not acknowledged their presence. They have not understood that from a simple stillness and silence, from a simple moment, in the same way that all the world simulated from an original moment, every instance, that's what you're experiencing. You are the simulated within the original space. That is the gift of mankind. We did not just notice the world, we noticed how it was too designed. We noticed how specific it was, all we are and how big it is, and it's as if like they're part of this system, and we're trying to interpret the whole system and really to play our part. What does it mean to be a member of the human species? What does it mean, human being, to be alive in a human form? That means you don't get it, because you think it started from a blank slate. You don't see. Yeah, 8.1 billion advanced moments to manifest as the world. That means you don't get it. You think that you're working in the world. Your work is the world. How are we truly present in all of it? And what is the might of the human species? We going to fall short, or are we going to have what it takes to be an advanced civilization? All right, let me go into a river. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful. We are simulated beings, simulated by an original unconditional power. All reality is searching for the original moment that it belongs to. All living beings are manifest in accordance to protocol. There is code everywhere. Your ego code is the code that you function through immediately. The source code is the actual ontology of reality. You're present in a world that has a host. You're not the only advanced living being. There are many. When it comes to the question of are we existing experientially or are we experiencing existence, the answer is very fascinatingly both. What does that mean? That means you find yourself in front of your eyes in a world that you are to find, okay, because it's designed. But behind your eyes, you are potential in space. And that potential in space is very different. It generates meaning. So, what does that mean? When you look at the human function, the human being, its eyes, your biology gives you access to forms, but these forms have no meaning. It is you that gives them meaning. When you understand, you are the meaning giver of your life. You are what makes your life make sense. And hear it from someone who I firmly believe there's a presence, there's a host to this world. But also, I was one of those kids that waited. I've been like this since my youth. You know, that means I not only do I acknowledge there's a higher power, but I acknowledge that that higher power coordinates will. But I did not acknowledge the real presence of this higher power until I had an experience in 2023, and then it became clear to me. It became very clear that we're not alone. That the fact that we think we're alone is the ignorance of the first contact. Do you know what the first contact is? That means before alien contact, humanity contacted something way more important. And because we have contacted that, we are worthy to be in a cosmic position. What does that mean? That means if tomorrow, if I'm walking in the park and I'm walking my invisible cat with a leash in the future in like a sky city park, you know, and extraterrestrials land down and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna invade your species." I would look at the extraterrestrials and I would say, "How do you know this is our species? How do you know before you a higher power has not contacted us?" And the extraterrestrial invaders would look at me and be like, "What do you do?" And I'll be like, "Get out of here! Get!" I'd look at the extraterrestrials and I'd be, "You think that we in the outer realms," I would legit say that to the invader. If the extraterrestrials were like, "Yo, we can just invade you guys. You guys have nothing in the outer realms." So I'll be like, "Why do you think we have nothing in that?" Why do you think we are living so apparently so unarmed, so unprotected? You know, that these extraterrestrials want to invade. And I would tell him, buddy, you don't get it. Humanity has a Lord. And I would preach, I wouldn't just preach, I would explain. I would explain to those invaders that long ago in Earth's timeline, we discovered the host, and we are that rare species among all the species in various systems that, in some sense, has recognized the host. That means to fight with the human species, to invade, to disturb the human species, is to disturb the great creation of the Lord of worlds. That is the difference. You see, that is the only thing. The true confidence of reality is if you have found a moment that cannot die. If you have noticed that death was born and before it there was a presence to the moment. You see, it's linguistic as long as it's humanized. It's conceptual, contextual, it's understandable as long as it's conditional. The moment the species is in the presence of an unconditional power, you will break down. I am not kidding. Because you think that all these religious people fighting over the truth, they are praying to different gods. It's just like a percentage of the species has noticed. There was another tenant in the room before we got here. We are not the owners of this existential, gigantic, some cosmic property. We are not the owners. The deed is not in our name. The deed of manifestation is in the name of another. Excuse me. Life is way more important than what it means to us. And when you understand this, you access the real earth. That means I am sorry, young children, you don't see the real earth. I'm sorry, all the egotistical entities that believe self is more important than everything else that gives that self. You understand? There will come a moment where you will see these talks that I'm giving, these are natural, and the future generations, all of them will be giving them. Today, there's one Mr. Within. In the future, there will be billions. The songs of advanced civilizations will be heard. Humans will realize their identity does not need to be limited to only the personality, their memory trail, only what they have seen. Who are you to think that your name is the ultimate when the world is beyond the horizon? That is the point. The human cannot answer. That means they say that language is a tool that humans used so long that they forgot that it's the tool. And today we're living as tools. And this is why everybody annoys each. You understand? It's like there's moments that some people have done like fools gatherings, and it's like upset me or delayed me. And in that moment, I haven't gotten angry at them. I have no clue about it. So you might not believe, right? Like if suddenly somebody comes and like punches me, okay? First of all, I'd be ashamed that I got it. I didn't even get that close. But if somebody comes, if something chaotic happens, as far as I'm concerned, it's the outer realm. That means the likes and dislikes, all of it. I'm sorry, it is the divine. That means it's so weird. I do acknowledge that there's 8 billion physical human beings, but I do not acknowledge that your actions are yours. You know what that means? That means 8 billion human beings, we're living in a world where we're like, yeah, everybody's responsible for themselves. Everybody has a name. Everybody is an idea of a person. You know what I mean? In this story of civilization. I'm sorry. I have a love and hate relationship with language. I hate language when it possesses people. I love language when it is used as the tool that was meant for. That means King Arthur pulled the sword out of the stone. He didn't think he was this. He didn't like years didn't go by and they're like, "Yo, Arthur, what are you doing?" He's like, "Don't call me Arthur. I'm my sword. I'm Excalibur. Everybody call me Excalibur." It's like, "No, Arthur, you're not Excalibur." Same with Iron Man. Imagine I said this in like earlier talks. Imagine like one day Iron Man comes up to like Pepper, like his wife, and it's like, "Honey, I'm no longer Tony. I changed my name. First name Iron, last name Man. I'm legit Iron Man." And I don't believe in Tony Stark anymore. I'm just this Iron Man. And Pepper, like, Tony Stark's wife would be like, "No, honey, what the fuck?" Like, what I mean? She'd call Thor, and out of nowhere, a hammer would just break the Iron Man suit. Tony Stark would awaken that he's Tony Stark, he's not the Iron Man suit. In the same way that you guys are not your names, you're not your ideas, you're not what you overlay on the outer arms to give it meaning. You are the presence that anything arises from. That means treat yourself as an agency of the activation of force. That's really what I see. In my experience, what is a human being? It's an actor. It's activated. It's a simulation that activates an original moment. And in that original moment, you realize that your personality is eclipsing your presence. And that there's a way you can access the world that is not like, see, I see right now, like, close to like, what is it, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I see 12 birds on this tree outside of my car, on this tree. Now, one approach is physically being, I have to physically get close to those birds to interact. But if I consider myself as a presence, if I suddenly say, okay, that those birds are existing in existence, I am existing in existence, existence is existing in existence, existence has a presence. That means what I common with everything in existence is my existence. But what I have in common with the human species is my experience of existence. So really human beings are evaluating each other based on how they're experiencing existence. The issue is that we are not telepathic, and this world is so, it's humorous, it's like funny, and at the same time bizarre, and at the same time chaotic, you know. To me, it's like season, right? Like there's days I wake up and I'm like, this is the world a little bit like chaotic today. And there's days I wake up, oh my God, is the world just a little too ordered today? You know, there's days I haven't had. I'll be honest, I haven't had many of these days, but there's been some days because I overthink. I know because I overthink, I don't let a lot of things naturally happen. This is like one of those things I gotta, like, it's part of my life. I gotta figure it out because you know what overthinking is. Overthinking is that you might enter a moment and your mind is maybe destined to be like 50% active in that moment, and your body is destined to be 50% active. But there's moments in life where my mind is 80% active, my body is 20% active, and that 80% generates new bodies. So what does that mean? In front of your eyes, you're limited to the experience of one biological body. Behind your eyes, you are an attention that can access any view. The reason we have minds, like, look at it, guys, we have minds. We have, like, traditionally, they're like, guys, what is going on? And somebody was like, I don't know, man, but I see a body, I see a mind, I see a soul. Old school was so, like, people, like, you don't understand. Atheists don't get it. Atheists don't understand how archaic the Bible is. Secular people, Richard Dawkins, all these guys, they don't understand that history happens in a cycle. These guys are just enjoying their show while they're alive. That means if everybody on the planet became atheists, just as Voltaire, one of the world's most famous atheists, and like hilarious people, where on his deathbed, this priest came up to him and he's like, "Yo, you wanna, like, believe in Jesus Christ, atheist." And Voltaire was like, This is no time to be making enemies, old man. And then he dies. The dude had a sort of that was beyond it. Some people have that sort of. I find it rare. Usually, most people's humor are world. I don't know. To me, God, the system admin has created 8 billion users. These 8 billion users have no clue what each other think behind each other's eyes, but they're living behind their eyes. So what does that mean? When you play a video game, you sit at a table with a computer, okay, and you log in. I'm trying to tell you guys, your presence. You guys are all the unknown presence of a life force, but simultaneously, you're being a known personality. The personality is a tool, right? It's a function. I have seen this. Like sometimes there's people on Earth who, those people who fail, they sometimes see success the most clearest. You know, and as someone who I'm telling you, there was some natural force field. I was exiled in my youth, internally. I exiled something was exiling me. I couldn't be myself when I was young because I didn't like or trust or realize myself. You know, I am telling you that more life is going, you especially understand this and see this in people who are older than you, that their intelligence is not working in accordance to their calculation. It is working in accordance to their presence. So it's kind of like you're living this life from the beginning. Like if we look at a lifetime, pretty much it's like a character playing a video game that's logging in and out, right? And when it logs in, it makes decision, and then logs out. Decision, log out. Log in, decision, log out. Do you see what I mean? Right? So it doesn't matter. Even if there was no God, the idea would arise, the idea of wondering about the true agency and the true powers of the realm will always be there. It doesn't matter how smart, how foolish, the situation of the world pulls you into its understanding, pulls you into its knowing. Right? That means I am a person who I acknowledge that people can know, but I also acknowledge that moments already know in the same way they're destined. You know what a destined reality means? It means a programmed reality. So I'm trying to tell the viewers you can live with your presence. I've seen this. I, in my own life, have been more and more going towards this. I'm understanding that what is important is not how the brain, what's happening in the brain per se. It's the presence of the whole moment, right? That means, like, if Tony Stark is in the Iron Man suit, if he thinks he's the Iron Man suit only, that's wrong. If he thinks he's only Tony Stark, that's wrong, right? Because in the moment, there's Tony Stark wearing an Iron Man suit, and in the moment for human beings, there is a conditional object and subject that is being worn by an unknown presence of a force. So really, this is why you cannot ideify, you cannot turn into an idea, you know, um, reality. It is not an idea. It is for your convenience that you interpret. Okay, so guys, I refreshed the browser. It should be okay. It could be from your side, but it should be recording. Where I'm going with the lecture today is that the secret presence of life is simply that life is present in a sort of instantaneous way. Okay, but when personalities, they're based on past to present, which means they're based on a journey. To me, um, I understand that there is an object in my moment of awareness, but I am not just the object. I understand there are subjects in my moment of awareness, but I am not just those subjects. I understand that I am the presence of an unknown presence before I know it. That means every person, before I know them, before they communicate or express or make any sort of movement that suggests how their intelligence happens, right? They are unknown. Understand it's an unknown world. Everybody's an unknown being, and it is based on their expressions and the previous set of symbolisms and rules that we've accepted that we understand. So to be alive is it's like a language. To exist is like to be a communication. That means imagine I communicate. Let's say I say the word, like any word I say, right? The communication, if it suddenly becomes conscious, it's not going to know who communicated it, and it's not going to know what sort of communication it is. I don't think it's too far fetched of an idea to consider that human intelligence is the relationship of a higher plane with a lower plane. But it's just that we realize there's a system admin, and it means we have a human jurisdiction. Beyond our human jurisdiction, it's in the hands of the unseen. So what does that mean? There's a system admin. There's a command center. Divinity just means like comms. Okay, so if you start seeing this world as a commanded world, I am telling you, somebody in the chat section says, I've been watching my children like a scientist watches animals. I let them go do without interfering and see what happens. That's an excellent approach, right? One of the biggest things, and of course, like throughout the years, my understanding of this has kind of like increased, where they say the father archetype is to, in some sense, teach the children conditional discipline and to give the children conditional discipline, and the mother archetype is to give the children unconditional love, right? And these two roles, they like psychologists encourage that shouldn't be done by a single individual. But I want to tell you something crazy, okay? I saw this video. This was one of the coolest videos. Like I'm not a parent, I'm not even married, but it's honestly one of the coolest videos I've seen. It was this father in China at a restaurant, okay, and he had his like young kid on a chair, okay, and this young kid on a chair, right, falls down from the chair, and she can't get back up on the chair, and the young kid starts crying. Okay. Now the mother, who's a symbol of unconditional love in the life of the child, is like, no, my poor baby boy, go help him up the chair. The mother just wants to solve the problems of the child, unconditional love, Now the father tells the mother to back off, and the father looks at the kid and says, and just taps on the chair and looks at the kid and says, get up on the chair yourself. So the mother wanted to solve the problem of the child The father was like, no, you got to solve it yourself. And the father and the kid tries to get up the chair. First time it fails, it just like, whines a little. Then the father taps on the chair again. The kid gets up on the chair by himself. The moment he gets up, he looks at his father and his father rewards. His father smiles and hugs him and says, good job. You know what I mean? So the whole point of this is if you solve your children's problems, they will end up being raised in a world where they will feel the problem has to be solved from outside of them. Okay, and this is a cool thing to do to children, and I'm saying this because I know that like children of, for example, like billionaires, for example, like Elon Musk's children or people like that, their children, right? I know that they were raised in a world that in any world where somebody solves your problem, that world stops being real for you, especially if you're used to solving your own problems. Same thing with women, I think. Some women, they're used to solving their own problems. You solve a problem for them, they don't, to them, they're like, okay, this is not normal. You understand? You understand? So it's the psychology of life is so fascinating that everything has a deeper presence than how it's happening. Okay? And the whole point of it is, right? I think that religion is so profound that it provides an archetype that kind of plays both roles. You know what I mean? Like, what is fascinating is that men and women both acknowledge the notion of God. Do you know what I mean? It's not just like men believe in God, or just women believe in God, right? And when you look at that, that means when you look at the human beings, like all bodies set our differences, okay? Like as biological organisms, are in different positions, man and woman, right? But those are those are the manifest components. That means even though we're being man and woman, right? Every entity from birds to pigeons to like, I don't like pigeons, but birds to like, insects or whatever, like from anything, at some point you begin to see it's the relationship of awareness, a field of awareness with form. So pretty much human beings are being raised in this world to either rely on their own force or to rely on forces outside of themselves. And you find this in human psychology because if you have somebody who was raised in a religious environment, right, and even if they say they're not religious, suddenly in a moment of emergency or panic or there's something beyond their control, right? So, anyways, the whole point of it is life will eventually go forward. Doesn't matter how good or bad you are or like what sort of trauma you have. The whole point of it is adaptation. And even if a person has something in their youth that's incomplete, it doesn't mean in the future they're not going to get a trauma. You know what I mean? That means if somebody's young and they don't have, let's say, a parent figure, it doesn't matter. Like somebody could have a parent figure, but later on, years in their life in the future, still have a trauma or something. You know what I mean? For that archetype, right? Because in the same way that there's an alphabet, we all know that we communicate through, there's an alphabet of human values. And pretty much what they don't tell you, life is about the prioritization of value. Every child that is born in this world decides on the value it is drawn towards. But it is not only up to itself, it is up to many things beyond it because you don't know the destinies of moments. You don't know, like you could have kids and your kids go to school, but you don't know what kind of friends they will have. You don't know what sort of experience of existence other souls will have. But the most important thing is to try to explain where they are as much as possible. I think this is the only time, like, you know, I'm not a parent, of course, but I think this is the most important task of any parent. Your task is to make the child be aware of what you have been made aware of before the child entered this world. This to me is the key. If you're a parent, that means you are aware of things that this soul, right, has come towards that understanding. You might even see different people, right? Like there are people who, and you know what's funny? They did this study and they realized the more wealthy and educated the person is, the less they have kids. You know why? Because their success is selfish. Selfish success is an inner death. I'm telling you, it takes you to the void. This is why right now it is so hard for me, you know, that even though I'm raised around businessmen and I'm even getting an MBA, right? Regardless of that, to me, the economical system, there is something impure about surviving to be pure. And there's a part of me, okay, I don't want to descend to the level of taking because I'm a soul that has concluded it's much more smarter to give than take. That means all of you who don't create content, it's because I mean, of course, like your lives could be filled in different dimensions you're giving. Okay, giving is not just in one dimension, right? But ever since I heard this quote from Rumi, before death takes away all that is given, give away all there is to give. It means you've entered a room, we've entered this world room, a system, this world system. We can update the system and then leave, or we can use the system and leave, and it doesn't matter. I am giving permission for anybody in the future generations to be as evil and as good as you want. I don't care. Be the evil. Like, all right, future generations, you guys all want to be billionaires. You guys all want Bugattis. Why stop there? Why stop there for your ego? You guys are all into hustle culture. You're trying to become like this next level specimen of humanity. Why stop there? Why not 8 billion people? All of them want to be the king of the hill. Why not 8 billion rulers of the world? Why stop at a Bugatti? Why stop at billions of dollars? Why not become the conqueror of existence? You know what? Because the moment you try to control the natural with the unnatural, you get kicked out of the natural server. And that's what the elites are suffering from. They're suffering from being kicked out of the original rhythms of reality. And this is why they listen to the future generations. They have to. This world is designed not for the past to control, but for the future to arrive and advance it, the mind of the future generations. Do not let the past deny the rule of the future. That is the thing. As a soul, I'm like, all right, I don't care. They were rude to my past. Okay, the past is past. I don't care. Okay, they're rude to me in the present will pass. I don't care. But if you are rude in the future, then in some sense, I will. It's as if there are philosophers who will bring light that even will scare souls. Let me tell you, because it's an existential situation, our experience of it is simulated at a certain range of need. I want to read for the viewers a poem from Khalil Gibran. Khalil Gibran is a Lebanese poet. That was a very conscious individual. I am in no way Sufi or spiritual. All my whole spirituality after 2023, just all of it became child's play, like playing with like clay and sand. It was like spirituality was a sandbox. I was creating my own sandcastles, and then the moment I realized there is another, if you're Christian, there's a story. I don't know. I don't know if this was before Christ or what, but there's a story that there were these people sentenced to go into like this fire by like some evil ruler at the time. And there are these three people that go into the fire. Like, I'm not Christian, but I can understand, like, in people think Islam, they're saying
They don't care about Christ. Islam is the, like, if you look at a Christian and a Muslim, the Muslim has to honor Christ. Christ is an advanced being superior to any human. He's a prophet. He's here in the system admin. You understand? But he is not the system admin to Muslims, because if Muslims make anything equal to God, they have committed the biggest sin of their life, even worse than death. You know? Because truth cannot be limited to a shape. So in Christianity, there's the story of these guys who were sentenced to go into this fire, right? And there's three of them, if I remember correctly, right? And when they go into the fire, suddenly they see four people in the fire. And these three come unharmed. And then after this, there's singers, even they think there's another, there was another in the fire. That means the power of the system admin is so vast that even if you're in hell, you can repent. Even if you are not the chosen, even if you are limited to the solar activation of an NPC, right? Every being that has manifested, that has been created by the Creator, if it looks at how it has been created, do you understand? Can you get close to the Creator? People say love yourself. That sentence doesn't make sense to me. But if you say care for your life, that sentence makes sense. A person's like, yo, man, I love myself. And then they're like, subconsciously destroying themselves with their addiction. I think if I loved myself, I would hate myself. Because what am I loving? A being stuck in a civilization that isn't advanced, a species where everybody's in their own world, they think they see each other. Their roars of advanced civilization will be heard. You know, I saw this in 2014. Like when I started the talks, I saw visions that people in the future will, with graffiti, write "Find Mr. Within" on walls, because it is a symbol for the presence of life. Presence is priceless. Your personality, based on how you behave, can be, trash or treasure. It can be treasured or treated like trash. Most human beings, if they dislike something, they dislike it. And that is so. It's like everybody speaks their own language of what life means. And if you don't speak that language, the person is going to become person. To me, it's the patient ones. I was the quiet kid in class, and now I realize I should have become friends with all the other quiet kids in class. They were the alert ones. The rest were just in simulated loops, which means this world intentionally designs introverts and extroverts so they can cover each other's blind spots. See, that's how it's designed. Your eyes are not designed to be like above your head like a camera so you can see yourself in third person. Like a video. You know what I mean? They're not designed that way. Our eyes are on our face. We're designed to look out. And we're designed not to see our own face until we find a mirror or like a still pond or something. We're designed to see our shadow if we turn around, but we're not designed to see our face. So we can say that sight by nature is designed to see the result. It's very, like, this is a very complex thing to explain, but it's very difficult for me to say, am I seeing existence right now, or am I being a state of consciousness? Should I identify with the content of the state, or should I identify with the whole state of life? For me, it's advanced. I don't. A part of me is only on this planet. That means it's kind of brutal. I have to be honest with myself and acknowledge it. Because when you're young, people could make you believe in the wrong ideas of yourself. And if they make you believe in the wrong idea of yourself, you'll spend a lot of time climbing out of that idea just to see it was never necessary to be there at all. So, guys, we're all hidden beings behind our personalities. So, behind my eyes, none of you can see exactly all I'm aware of and how I am. I think that there is a presence of pure instantaneous awareness, and the content inside that awareness is being there's a relationship between the elements that's simulating the meaning. So I'm saying it this way: the world is this holistic system. We are elements in the system, and these elements are interdependent. They're interacting with one another. When they interact with one another, they simulate bigger elements in the system, but that bigger element doesn't mean it is the truth. So that's the point of realizing it's called systems thinking. You don't ignore how every, every separate form or element is in one context. The singularization of the context of reality existence is intentionally designed for all of us to be in it. It's an external public server. It's designed for positioning, for all of us to be in the same position. But we're not designed to experience reality. Do you know what I'm saying? Excuse me, we're not designed to experience, it's like we're designed to exist alongside everything, right? We're existing in the same presence as everything else existing, but the ideas of us are a certain ranged simulated experience, and our sight, even our eyesight, is a certain range of the electromagnetic spectrum. Like we can't see Wi-Fi waves, so there's so much of life that has a presence that influences reality that we can't see. And I'm telling you, if you're looping in knowledge or in the known aspects of sectors of reality, you're not going to wonder about the unknown, right? And the unknown is where the advancement is. That means sometimes, a person may desire things, want some things. Like let's say right now, I want an incredible wife, right? But then I got to think like, okay, am I living in the archetype of an incredible husband? Do you know? And I realize no, right? So the expectation doesn't match the actuality of what's happening, right? And so one has to come to terms with the presence of how they are simulating meaning. They are overlaying subjectivity on objectivity to bring it to life to an unknown viewer within. Anyways, thank you for listening. In the name of God, the most benevolent, the most merciful, and the most advanced.